love you. Will you marry me?
Yes, love.
Rain poured mercilessly over the city streets, washing away the makeup that hid her trembling face. Lila stood outside the grand hotel ballroom, clutching the edge of her worn dress like a lifeline. Inside, laughter and champagne flowed like music. Her ex-fiancé was celebrating his engagement to the woman he'd chosen over her. Her heart burned with humiliation, but what broke her most wasn't the betrayal. It was the emptiness that came after. Desperate to hold her head high, even for one night, she made a choice that would change her life forever. She looked at the man beside her, a billionaire known for his coldness, and whispered through the tears, "Please, just pretend to love me." Lila worked as a florist in a small downtown shop, her hands always covered in soft traces of petals and thorns. Life hadn't been kind to her. Her parents were gone too soon. The debts they left behind crushed her dreams, and the man she thought she'd marry, Evan, had left her for a woman from wealth. Yet tonight, she'd been invited to his engagement party. Whether it was a cruel joke or a misplaced attempt at closure, she didn't know. But she went, maybe to prove that she had survived. Inside the golden ballroom, everything screamed luxury, chandeliers, silk gowns, and a world she didn't belong to. People whispered as she entered, her simple blue dress standing out like a quiet wound in a sea of glitter. Evan's eyes widened when he saw her, surprise flashing into pity. And that pity was the dagger. Her chest tightened. She needed air, dignity, anything. That's when she bumped into him. Alexander Grant, the billionaire hotel owner. Everyone in the city knew him, the ruthless businessman with no time for emotions. His cold eyes studied her for a moment. "I'm sorry," she whispered, ready to vanish. But something in her voice made him pause, the kind of sorrow that cuts deeper than pride. Then Evan walked past with his fiancée, smirking. In a panic of heartbreak, Lila turned to Alexander and blurted, "Can you pretend to be with me? Just for tonight. Please. I just can't let them see me broken." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then, against all logic, Alexander's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Pretend to love you," he murmured. "That's an unusual request." "I know," she said, tears threatening. "But it's just for tonight. I promise." He looked into her trembling eyes, and for reasons even he couldn't explain, he said, "All right." Inside the ballroom again, the crowd turned. Murmurs spread as Alexander gently placed a hand on her waist. "You didn't tell me your name," he said softly. "Lila." "Then smile, Lila. Let's give them something to talk about." For the first time in months, she laughed. Just a small, nervous laugh, but it felt like air after drowning. By the end of the night, Alexander had done more than pretend. He danced with her, defended her when someone made a cruel comment, and spoke about her as if she were the most extraordinary woman he'd ever met. His words melted the tension in the room, and perhaps the walls around his own heart. When the night ended, she thanked him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to do that." He replied, "Kindness doesn't need a reason, Lila." She never forgot those words. Days turned into weeks. Lila returned to her small flower shop, trying to forget that magical night. But kindness, like a seed planted in good soil, never stays buried. One morning, a sleek black car stopped outside. Alexander stepped out, holding one of her bouquets. "You made this," he said. "It brightened my office. Thought I'd tell you that in person." She smiled shyly. "You didn't have to come all this way. I wanted to." From that day on, Alexander started visiting the shop more often. He wasn't there to buy flowers. He was there to listen, to breathe, to be human. He told her about his mother who had died when he was young, how her favorite thing in the world had been tending to roses. That's why he had bought her flowers that day. In return, Lila told him about losing everything, her parents, her home, and the man she thought loved her. Slowly, between shared silences and gentle smiles, their worlds began to intertwine. Alexander started funding her dream, expanding the little flower shop into a community garden where people could come for free to heal and find peace. When she asked why, he said, "Because your kindness reminded me I still have a heart." Word spread quickly. The billionaire who never smiled was now seen planting flowers beside a girl in a blue dress. Evan came by one day, curiosity etched on his face. "You did well for yourself," he said bitterly. Lila looked at Alexander, then back at Evan, and simply said, No, I didn't do well for myself. I did well because someone believed kindness could still change the world. Months later, the garden was thriving, a sanctuary of color in a city of gray. People who had lost hope came there to find comfort. A widow planted tulips for her late husband. A young boy, once homeless, helped water the plants every morning. And through it all, Lila and Alexander grew closer, not through wealth or pretense, but through compassion. But life, as always, tested them. A storm destroyed half the garden. Alexander offered to rebuild it instantly, but Lila refused. No, she said softly. We'll rebuild it together, with the people who were helped by it. So they did. Dozens came back, those who had once been strangers. They brought tools, seeds, and laughter. Together, they rebuilt what kindness had created. On the reopening day, Lila stood before the crowd. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Months ago, I begged someone to pretend to love me so I wouldn't look broken. But instead, he taught me what love really means: kindness, patience, and faith. Alexander took her hand and whispered, "It wasn't pretending, Lila." The crowd erupted in applause. Tears filled eyes. And for the first time, Alexander, the man known for his cold heart, smiled like someone who had finally come home. That night, as the sun set behind the blooming garden, Lila realized something profound. Even a small act of kindness could grow roots deep enough to change not just one life, but many. Moral of the story: true kindness doesn't end with one act. It plants hope in hearts that thought they could never bloom again.